I'm Şwanî and this is the Amargi. For those who don't know, the Amargi is an independent platform that looks at the Middle East through a more human lens, connecting local realities in Kurdistan, Iraq, Iran, Syria, and Turkey to broader global questions of power, democracy, and identity. Today I'm talking with Councilwoman-elect Naren Briar. Naren is a Kurdish American activist and politician, and she was recently elected to the Bellevue City Council after running a campaign of progressive politics. And she also challenged the longtime incumbent. Naren, welcome to the Amargi.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
My pleasure. Now, before we start with the questions, correct me if I'm wrong, but 7, 8 years ago, we did an interview, and that was my first ever live interview that I've done. And maybe it was yours as well. So if it was, this is kind of fitting that my first live interview with the Amargi is with you.
It's a full circle moment,
It's a full
and
circle moment.
I'm really excited to do this interview because you and I would like to, it'd be fair to say we've grown together as well, like in the
Yeah.
digital age. I remember the first time we met, I mean, years ago. And so I'm super excited to talk with you about all of this.
And so all these years later now, we're sitting at the Amargi. And so all these years of working, what was the thing that got you into politics? Was there like a specific moment that made you think, I gotta do something about this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I like this question. And I think the conventional framing of it is not valid. And that's because I think the question insists that we are exclusive and removed from politics. And I
Mm,
think I disagree with that sentiment. So I didn't get into politics much like yourself. I was formed by it, and I think we all are. Sometimes in my instance, it's a little bit more explicit, but in the case for everyone, I think we are all formed by politics. I was curious about why my parents came to the US, especially as I began reading about the rise of National Socialism and within the Middle East, especially as it pertained to, the Ba'athist Party and the consequential chemical attacks on the Kurdish people. So over the course of my professional career, I realized that local politics, I think, is the most effective route to take to remedy some of the large scale political apathy that we're feeling here in the United States.
And that's been growing, and we're going to get to that. But just on your own career, you've been an organizer with different projects, and you have been, like you said, we've been formed by politics, even if we're not directly involved. But now you're directly involved. You have previously been political outside of political institutions, but now you are exercising that political power in a very direct way. What was the goal of entering directly in this way?
Yeah, I think this question is really funny for anyone that's been a friend of mine or has followed my work for some time because I was always frustrated with bureaucratic systems. So, after working at an international level and meeting with some of the world's elites and politicians and, some really important people, I began to understand, I think, the higher that you go, the more stakeholders and bureaucracy you endure. So, for better or for worse, these systems and channels might exist for a reason, but they were slow and sometimes what I would call very, very ineffective. And so this stagnation led me to feel a lot of frustration, like many other people. I think sometimes I felt like I was talking to a brick wall when I was trying to advocate for something like resources for, Kurds or Christians or other religious and ethnic minorities. So I thought I did what was most effective, which was grassroots projects. And one of those was, of course, installing solar panels for learning centers, for refugee camps. And then I thought this was very effective. And at that time, waiting on an institution, bureaucratic channels to help was really, honestly, very ineffective. But I moved to Bellevue. And so this is sort of when the change happened. I was curious about the city because I was curious about the urban planning and how design can impact the quality of human life. And when I
Mm.
realized, okay, wow, local politics is everything I've ever cared about in one bundle. So I think that's why I felt like this was an effective route because you really can have an impact on the day to day.
Why is local politics such a, like for you, the way you described it, being so vital to the way you want to work, to what you care about? Why is that way
Yeah.
for you?
You know, I think local politics is something that impacts my everyday. It's the way that we iterate on our traffic signals. It's the way that we plan new housing. It's the way that we can incentivize people to use trains or cars for that matter, whatever it is. And so it has an immediate impact. And I think, in contrast, when you're working at such a higher level and you're seeing so many people subject to violence and there's no it seems like sometimes there's no effective remedy to help people on a larger scale. This can be a better starting point, I feel like.
I mean, okay, that actually
Yeah.
leads me perfectly into something else I want to ask. You ran on a progressive platform, like we talked about. Your political opponent had a much bigger financial backing, but almost twice as much of a budget as you did. But your message resonated so much. not only with local populations, with local voters, but also you had people who perhaps don't know what it's like living normal, regular, everyday jobs in the city, in the town. You had celebrity endorsements. You had all parts of society coming out and talking for you. Why do you think that message resonated so well across
Yeah.
social classes?
Yeah, this is a great question. One point was he actually, my opponent outraised me by four times. So he had
Four
nearly three,
times.
yeah, he had nearly $300,000. And I had like $90,000, which was still a lot, by the way. I was impressed I was able to raise that much because I was asking for money was the worst thing in the entire world. But I don't think you can buy your way into winning anymore. People vote according to policies, and I was the one who explicitly stated what their vision was. I mean, among all the people that were running at that time for whatever different office, you would click my website and it would explicitly say what I believed in and what I was going to fight for, whereas other people had values or vague statements, right? So mine was like, okay, I want increased density near transit centers. I want to increase walkability. I want to focus on, the tree canopy retention. I want to connect our city better. I want to make sure we're lowering our crime rates. And so I also leveraged social media, which no one had done at least in this city pretty effectively. And I'm really
Mm,
proud because we were able to mobilize like communities that never got engaged before. So like Kurds, Armenians, Ukrainians, Russians, Uzbekis, a lot of Mexicans and Latino populations as well. But, you can have all the money in the world, but if your campaign explicitly states what you'll do versus a video that took you like $20,000 to produce, like my opponent did, it just doesn't work anymore. And if
mm.
people are getting displaced out of their homes because they can't afford the taxes, like no one cares, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think,
No, of course. And I mean, what you're seeing across, and not just in the US and not only in Bellevue, but in a lot of places in Europe as well, progressive politics is becoming more popular, if that's the right way to put it. You have Mamdani's win in New York. In the UK, there's the surge of the Green Party. In Denmark, where I live, there's the Green Left and the Red Green Alliance. So, do you think these differences, or rather these changes, these developments in the way people vote, do you think it's part of a bigger trend going towards left-wing progressive politics? Or do you think it's more of a reaction to what we're seeing with Trumpism, with the economic hardships we're all experiencing, the many years of war we've been through?
yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think ultimately, when people are working hard to earn a degree and this renders them with like a mediocre job that hardly pays them anything in a housing market that's impossible to compete, and people naturally get frustrated. And when we're talking about the oscillation between Trump and respectability politics, I don't think it really carries its weight anymore. Like, or even identity politics for that matter. I won my campaign because I talked about real issues that were facing my constituents. I didn't run on being the first Kurdish woman or being the first religious minority, or whatever identity people have reported on. Because quite frankly, if I'm personally a Bellevue resident who can't afford to live in my house anymore, then who the hell cares about Naren being the first Kurd? Like, great, but that's not relevant to my personal life. So
Yeah.
I don't think identity of the person running really matters anymore. Are you going to make my city safe and affordable or walkable or not? So I don't know if it's left or right. I think any agenda that has evidence-based solutions is going to really win here. And that's why we actually saw Trump won districts where like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won. Or same thing with Rashida Tlaib, or in the recent meeting between Zohran Mamdani and Trump. It's all very convoluted now. And I think it was actually like a couple days ago, Trump came out and said that he was going to ban corporations from buying homes, which I don't think any Democratic administration prior to him even tried to remotely get close to a policy like that, which I would personally compartmentalize as being sort of a leftist policy. But I think it really is about evidence-based solutions now, as opposed to, branding and so on and so forth.
So the dichotomy is also the dichotomy of Republican and Democrat perhaps is crumbling a little bit.
I definitely think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So what concrete changes do you want to make in Bellevue? And can you make those changes as a councilwoman?
Yeah, hopefully. So I'm one of seven different council members, so you have to be very collaborative on the council and achieving whatever mission you're there to do. So I personally believe that we're in a housing crisis. I think we need
Mm,
to build more homes and make it easier for developers to build houses. The market is so competitive right now that the average house in Bellevue costs $1.5 million. And so if you are, not working, I have friends who are pretty high up at Facebook, at Meta, or at Google, who still can't afford a home in Bellevue. So it's like, at what position do I need to get in order to find a house here. So there's some pretty effective case studies. Austin, Texas naturally brought down the prices of their cities by increasing the supply. In the short term, we can look at different incentives. And then also want to expand walkability and have a really, really human-centered design for our cities, because that's how you get more people out in the cities. It's how you get grandpas playing chess on the streets. You get grandmas gossiping about you. Like that type of vibrancy, I think is really important.
But there's been people in these positions in the city council. I'm not too familiar with the American hierarchy of politics or the political system, but within every rank or every aspect of political life in the US, there has been people who are longtime politicians, but they've not really come up with the solutions that you're proposing here. And Mamdani is also proposing in New York. Why do you think they can't quite key into it? Is it just being out of touch, or is it ideological? What is it, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're touching up on is something that doesn't just hit politics. I think it hits every field now. Like, I think once you're in office, it's easy to focus on vanity or marketability.
Hmm.
Especially we're in a digital age now where you have to have a lot of followers or clout to be taken seriously. And I think hopefully we're starting to get away from that. But this is true not amongst politicians. It's true amongst doctors. I know so many people that will only go to a doctor that has like a huge following on Instagram, or same thing with actors that are getting cast for different films in Hollywood. They have to have a certain threshold of followers in order to be taken seriously. And so ultimately, when people are in office and they want to get reelected, I've personally seen people like ambulance chase, meaning like politicians perform, and when it's all performance, they align themselves with whatever might be hot and topical at the moment, but
Hmm.
they're not really being pragmatic. And I think thinking about scalable solutions, and I think this is actually one thing I'm really excited to talk about. So I think success looks like improving the material conditions of people you're supposed to be representing. So I want to be able to implement something in Bellevue, a solution or program that is so effective that other cities start adapting this. So it's scalable. So we know it's like an evidence-based solution to whatever problem we're facing, whether it's a housing supply or walkability or whatever it is. But if I'm chasing the glory and prestige and seeking likes and retweets or whatever it is, it's so much better to just hire a publicist and do media interviews about how hard life is,
Yeah.
why my solutions are the best, as opposed to like actually doing the implementation work, which no one really wants to do anymore. So
So what kind of proposals are you thinking? Have you reached a point where when you get into office, when you start the work, these are the general outlines that you wanna propose?
I mean, so Bellevue's city government structure is different. So every city in the US has its own structure. Some have a strong mayor. So New York has strong mayor. So Zohran Mamdani can get into office and start delegating and dictating. Bellevue's not like that. We have a weak mayor system. So it really forces you to be very collaborative, and you can't independently go and work on whatever projects or programs that you want to work on.
Hmm.
But within the framing of what I'm interested in is like, so for example, during council meetings, sometimes some folks will go off and say some really interesting, like clickbait, or like you can tell sometimes the style that some people speak in is very obviously used for social media, whereas like some people are there generally asking questions about the data of like a different staff recommendation, for example. So I think that dichotomy is what's important to hone in on. But long story short, you have to collaborate and you have to learn how to influence without power. I think that's a very important skill to have in your life, regardless of what you do.
That's quite interesting because I think from my perspective, looking at it from the politics that I'm most familiar with, which is Kurdish politics, this is perhaps not the way historically it's been. Now there's changes, like especially in Rojava and West Kurdistan.
Yeah.
There's different types of political systems that are very similar to what you have in Bellevue. But just on that, I know you said being the first Kurdish woman in US politics, it's yes, it is something to be proud of, but it's not the thing that your constituents are caring about.
Yeah.
But getting into American politics as a woman, as a Kurdish woman,
Yeah.
what was that like? Were there issues and challenges that you had to adapt to or just
Totally.
block out?
It was really fun. I don't attribute malice to what could just be like a limited perspective or ignorance. So before I ran, I was volunteering at a local retirement center. And one of the elders I was working with called me a slur that you would usually use against Chinese Americans. And I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense. So I hosted a session on like proper stereotypes so that like he could accurately be racist with me so I could finally feel seen. There's a lot of work done pre-work done in order to be like discriminated against accurately, I guess, if that makes sense. Interestingly enough, like, even though I'm not Muslim or come from like a Muslim family, I faced a lot of Islamophobia. So a lot of 9/11 jokes, terrorist jokes, stuff like that. I think there was like a video of my face crashing into the Twin Towers or something like that, which was like kind of funny. But I felt really bad and sympathetic for like people who resorted to this kind of rhetoric, because I don't think it was ever about me. I think it was about fear, like fear of losing their homes, not affording groceries. Meanwhile, I'm like a Middle Eastern woman who built a career in tech and found stability through hard work, and I have the audacity to run for this position. So, I think it was definitely difficult. I think another interesting thing was that like Bellevue is a very diverse city. I don't think people realize that. Like, I think something like I don't want to get the statistic wrong. 80%, if memory serves me correctly, is like born outside of the U.S. So whatever geopolitical conflicts take place in the Middle East and Asia, wherever it is, sometimes they prevail locally amongst the diaspora. So navigating that was quite interesting as well. But yeah, I think you're always going to face a lot of racism, whatever. You just can't let it get to you. It doesn't matter. And you have to understand why that happens too.
I mean, especially right now, the way everything is moving, there's a lot of ultra right-wing politics. Xenophobia is on the rise. And
Yeah.
strange as it is to say, fascism has been on top for a while. Did those things, the fact that you are a Kurdish woman, the fact that you are Middle Eastern, uh, in combination with going on a or running on a progressive platform, did these things make it even worse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, as I was asking the question.
Yeah. It was tough. Ultimately, but it was pragmatic, right? Like at the end of the day, we want to see lower crime rates. We want to see houses that are affordable in a way that doesn't harm development. We want to see more walkability. And I think when you talk about that, people tend to resonate a little bit more with your policies. I
Mm.
think, several times I was asked if I was like a communist. Several times I asked, like, oh my gosh, a popular question was like, are you a Hamas supporter? And I was like, I'm talking about housing and transportation. What does Hamas have to do with this? So it
They're
was
both
really
H.
housing and Hamas. Yeah, exactly. They're
Yeah,
both the same
same
thing
thing.
if you really think about it. But I think one thing is that when you start when you stop trying to appeal to the emotions of people and you just talk about issues that matter to you, people start to feel a little bit less guarded. So
And so this is what you're hopefully going to start doing, or what you have been doing, what you're going to do at a official capacity as you get into office. I mean, we went over a lot of topics very quickly, but I have some questions for you, some quick fire round questions, if you will indulge me. Um, so, is there a political figure or societal figure that you look to for inspiration?
ooh, yes. Okay, I have a lot. Franklin D. Roosevelt, Salahuddin Demirtas, Komitas, Mama Risha,
I think
Farabi.
you might need to provide some context for Mama Risha.
I'm not
Uh,
providing context. Go read about it. We don't have time during this interview to talk about his iconic Farabi, Pope Francis, obviously, God bless his soul. And okay, George Santos, do you know who that is?
George Santos, the name is familiar. I know it's American politics adjacent.
He was a former Republican congressman who was expelled from Congress because he
Yeah.
misused campaign funds at Sephora for like makeup and Hermes. And I think if there's any Republican I could really relate to, it would be him. He's kind of a diva, so he would be left on my source of inspiration.
Now, as you say it, I'm remembering the skits on SNL that they would do a lot. So you mentioned Demirtas. So I gotta know how much do you follow Kurdish politics? If
Oh, yeah, probably too much for my own health. A lot.
Yeah. And in November there was actually an election in South Kurdistan as part of the Iraqi national elections. If you ran there, this is very hypothetical, but if you ran there, what would the platform have been?
You're getting me in trouble. Nothing, because the KRG is perfect. There's no corruption, there's reliable infrastructure, there's visa payments, there's broad highway infrastructure that continues regardless of the political party boundaries. It's perfect there. I would never run. There's nothing to fix there. So that's my answer.
We'll leave it there. Um, and okay, finally, what was the thing you enjoyed least about campaigning?
Okay, asking for donations. That was the worst thing in the entire world, especially as a
Yeah.
Kurd, because it's like culturally shameful to ever ask anyone for money. So asking people for things in general was just horrifying, and money in particular was the worst.
Well, I mean, you answered all my questions. I do want to keep you around and have you for more questions, but I also know you're very busy. So we're going to keep it short and sweet for this interview, and hopefully in the future we'll have you on again. But Nadine, thank you for joining us. Thank you for answering the questions again. And I've known you for many years, so seeing you go into politics was not a surprise, and I'm sure everyone else is saying it. You've won your first election, so I wish you luck as you go forward. And yeah, thank you for the conversation.
Honored to be here and with you, and I'm so excited to follow your endeavors. And thank you again for taking the time to chat with me. I'm super excited to see this.
My pleasure. You're always welcome at the Amargi.
Thank you.